The black-haired human wandered through the market with their employer. They stopped near a stall selling ornate robes of purple and black. The house slave calmly selected a few and paid for them, as his employer was being measured for a tailored set. Kaz's finger hovered on the trigger of her Remington 7000. Her crosshairs steadily aimed at the back of the trader's neck. Her ghillie suit made of commonplace trash and debris, concealing her from aerial observation. The building's height obscured her from the bustling, loud street below. She watched as the house slave snatched a disheveled slave woman by the hair, blood boiling. As the house slave pulled the terrified woman closer with a lascivious grin, Kaz adjusted her aim lower, letting her breath out slowly as she squeezed the trigger. A suppressed pop went unnoticed by the street below, as the house slave jerked away from the woman, clutching their groin as they fell to their knees before vomiting. Kaz slowly worked the bolt on her rifle, as the house slave's employer rushed over, a whip coming uncoiled from their belt. The whip was raised, and Kaz grinned cruelly as she let out her breath and squeezed the trigger. The hand that held the whip was torn off at the wrist, the stunned Geknosion falling back as a wide circle of space was given to the two suffering entities. Kaz just worked the bolt on her rifle again, her enemy's screams silent from this distance, as she carefully chose her next shot. Letting out her breath and squeezing the trigger, Kaz watched as both the traders and the Geknosion skulls popped like gore-filled balloons. "Damn fine shooting. 10 out of 10. A hushed voice next to her stated. With as little movement as possible, Kaz turned her head, spotting the ghostly pale teenager right off the bat. His clothing was utterly human in design. Brutal, synthetic simplicity. Platinum hair flowing in a non-existent wind, as they peered through a monocular towards the market square. The teen looked over and gave her a wink. "I know you're under there, Kaz. Don't worry. I'm not going to hurt you." Kaz harumphed skeptically, working the bolt on her rifle open and topping up her magazine. She didn't much care for the odd-looking boy, but he was about to get shot. "You do know you're the only one that can see me, right?" Kaz slowly turned her head back to the teenager, debating on shooting him and "That won't work. I've been dead for, well, I've lost count after a millennium." Kaz's curiosity was piqued, and she finally spoke, still staring down a rifle scope, hoping he would show up. "All right. Then who are you, Mr. I've been dead for millennia?" The teen chuckled softly, also still staring at the market square as the civil guard cordoned off the area. "I'm the guy you just sent those two bastards to. Also, can I just say, huge fan of what you're doing here. People think everyone gets an afterlife. Nah. Unless they're forgiven by their victims, they get what was formerly referred to as hell." Kaz nodded in understanding. She'd seen Drake's wrist tattoo, knew the teen wasn't bluffing. "So you're Death. Got it. Why are you here?" Death chuckled softly. "Honestly, I'm here to give you a little bit of closure." Kaz looked up at the teen suspiciously. "Tarvik is mine. Don't think you're doing me any favors by killing him off before I get to him. I want to make him suffer." With a soft, mirthful laugh, Death reached into his pants pocket and lobbed her what looked like a pendant. Glancing down at it, she felt her heart quicken just by observing the swirling nebulae inside the hourglass. This wasn't an ordinary necklace. Death's voice turned serious as he stared out over the market square. "That's an empty soul glass. I'm not technically supposed to just give them out, but I'm making an exception here." Kaz suspiciously glanced between Death and the soul glass. "What's the catch?" Chuckling, Death replied, "There isn't one. I just want you to have it for when you finally get your revenge. You can essentially design a personal heaven, or, hell, for any soul trapped within." Picking up the pendant, Kaz slipped it into her rifle bag with a nod, peering through her scope as a trader in golden robes inspected the two still warm bodies. "All right, Mr. Death. How do I use it then?" That's the easy part. It works off of karmic threads. When you kill someone who has a strong karmic tie to you, they're sucked into the glass upon death, instead of walking the cobbles, Not that I'd let them walk the cobbles anyway. Kaz nodded softly, letting out a shallow breath as the royal-employed trader slowly looked in her direction. She slowly squeezed the trigger, just as he exposed his throat. Fuck me, that's brutal. Good shot. Kaz chuckled softly for once as she watched the trader bleed out on the pavement, the market square quickly devolving into chaos. There was a sound of whipping cloth. Thanks. I try not to give them painless deaths. Kaz turned her head, but death was gone, leaving behind only a note with a Golgotha address written on it. Kaz shook her head, before slowly pulling the rifle under her ghillie suit to disassemble. Didn't even say goodbye. Rude. Drake knelt in the black sand of the featureless wasteland, leaning on his sword for support as sweat dropped from his bruised face. Carnifex's laugh grating against his ears. You could have it all. Power, revenge, wealth. All of it is yours if you just let me take control, little boy. Drake's ragged, labored breathing hardly allowed him to speak as he painfully dragged himself to his feet. Spacing his shaking legs at shoulder width, he huffed back. I don't want power. He shakily raised his sword into a peasant's guard, staring defiantly at the sharp-toothed demon. Dark black and blue bruises covered his entire body from the grueling fight. Carnifex growled with pleasure. Power gives you freedom, boy. Drake bolted forward, swinging clumsily at the demon's head. Carnifex laughed, sidestepping the clumsy swipe and raking his clawed gauntlet across Drake's back. Hissing in pain, the boy's swordsman stumbled, but remained upright as he turned to face Carnifex again. The demon chuckled, daintily picking scraps of flesh and titanite from his gauntlet's claws. Oh, silly boy. Do you really think you can beat me? You, a peasant slave playing with a sword. Do you really believe you'll win against a millennia-old butcher? Drake just nodded, jaw clamped tight as the wounds on his back burned with an unholy pain. Carnifex screamed a laugh, forming a second gauntlet. Drake tightened his grip on Alexandros, the sword seeming to hum in defiance of the ancient butcher. Drake charged forward, feinting to the side as a claw swiped at his face and swung Alexandros down at the demon's chest. His blade jittered as it was caught by Carnifex's second gauntlet. Searing pain blinded Drake temporarily as the butcher's gauntlet slashed across his face. Drake fell to his knees again, dropping Alexandros as he grabbed his face in both hands. He could hear his own flesh sizzling as blood poured into his eyes. Pathetic! Carnifex laughed, kicking him in the ribs with a bladed boot. Drake felt the blade pierce his lungs as he was lifted off the ground and thrown a few paces by the kick. Landing hard on his back, he spat up blood, the wound in his chest feeling like a red-hot poker. Blind, in pain, and without a weapon, Drake struggled to his feet, adopting a sloppy boxing stance. I'm not gonna give up, he gasped. A shadow covered his limited vision, and Drake threw a punch, only for his fist to be caught in Carnifex's gauntlet. That won't save you, boy. Carnifex giggled, before crushing Drake's hand into a bloody pulp. Refusing to scream, refusing to give in, Drake bit through his tongue, holding back the scream as his legs went weak. Something slammed into his gut and was ripped to the side. Blinding, white-hot pain taking over Drake's entire body. Falling back, Drake felt his stomach, feeling his own exposed entrails. A shadow leaned over him, and he felt a clawed hand reaching into his guts. Adrenaline sweetens the meat for a feast like you. Drake finally screamed as he felt his organs being pulled loose, the sound of wet chewing accompanying grossly satisfied noises from the demon. His blood-soaked vision began to darken as Carnifex spoke through a full mouth.
Yes, sir. It doesn't matter what you do. I'll always get my way. So good. I haven't eaten in forever.
Drake knew he was dying, and for a moment he thought of giving control to the demon. But then, as he helplessly flailed his one good hand, he felt his sword grip lying in the dirt. Hadn't he? A pulse ran from the sword's handle and up Drake's arm. A deep, warm, familiar voice echoing through his head. It's better to die standing than live forever in chains, son. Always remember that. He'd know that voice anywhere. Those words. For a moment, Drake was back at home, collecting firewood from the scrubland forests that surrounded their town. He remembered how his father had used that time to teach him swordsmanship with the sturdy branches of the scrub trees instead of swords. Closing his eyes slowly, Drake felt the pain fade away, felt as Carnifex's rage boiled over while he tore his body apart. With the last vestige of life in his body, Drake softly whispered 2 words. Fuck you. His vision faded to black. He felt, heard, saw, and smelled nothing around him. He only felt peace. Suddenly he was standing back in the wasteland of black sand, staring at an enraged Carnifex. The demon growled, heat distortion boiling from its mouth.
You petulant brat! I'm going to strip your flesh from your bones and eat it in front of you until you give me control.
Smiling softly, Drake felt a warm hand touch his shoulder. Looking back, he gazed up at his dad's proud smile. Looking back at Carnifex, Drake just chuckled, placing a hand on his sword's grip and drawing it with a sweeping motion. The blade burned with white fire, the dark lines on its surface now a shining gold. He'd wondered for a while why he'd named the sword Alexandros, but now he knew. Alexander was his father's name, an Anglicization of the Greek name Alexandros, but now he knew what that name meant. Alexandros, the defender of men, the warrior. With a psychotic grin, Drake took a high guard. With a deep breath of the putrid air, he half laughed, half shouted his defiance at Carnifex. Then I hope you're hungry, because I will never kneel. Not to you, not to the monarch, not to anyone. So bring it on, motherfucker! The demon blurred, and the next thing Drake knew, the demon was holding his still-beating heart, as pain blossomed in his chest. Falling to his knees, he grinned a bloody-toothed smile at Carnifex. The demon growled, crushing the boy's heart as he screamed at him.
You can't beat me! Give up, you worthless swine! Never.
Drake muttered as his vision faded away. Then he was back to standing on the black sand. Looking Carnifex in the eye, he grinned defiantly. I will never surrender to tyrants like you.